So let me start off this video with a massive apology. 2 years ago, I made a video called How to Evaluate a Pocket Watch. And not only is it a horribly produced video, I was new to YouTube then, please forgive me. I guess I just didn't answer the question properly because I'm still getting emails, daily emails, multiple daily emails regarding that question. How do you evaluate a pocket watch? What's my pocket watch worth? Is my pocket watch made out of gold or is it gold filled? Just things that I just don't think I clearly stated well enough to allow people to do this on their own time. I don't mind answering these questions at all, but eventually I may have too many questions a day that I won't find the time. So hopefully this video will help steer the course so that people can find some of the answers themselves. And then if you can't find that answer, feel free, contact me, but I at least want to give you a better leg up. So let's reintroduce the topic. How do you evaluate a pocket watch properly? Welcome to another episode of PocketWatchTime. My name is Patrick W. And as you heard me talk about in the intro, today's episode, we're going to learn how, or at least learn how to better evaluate a pocket watch. And step one, I got to tell you about a really great resource out there. And it's a website called the PocketWatch Database. And the website is PocketWatchDatabase.com. If you can't type it in, put it into the Google box, PocketWatch Database. You will definitely be able to pull it up. And it's going to be an invaluable research tool where you can answer the grand majority of your own questions. And what this allows you to do, one, is find the make and model of your watch. You can find out maybe how special and or sadly how probably not special it is. And you can also, in a special area, see what your case is most likely made out of. So let me kind of take you through some of the steps here. So first things first, I'm just going to introduce the page. Here's the introductory page, pretty straightforward. It's got a search screen. Once you get to the search screen, you can drop down and you can pick a brand. I'm guessing if you've got the pocket watch in your hand, you can differentiate the brand. Usually it's on the dial. You might see the name Elgin, Waltham, Hamilton. There's several other brands out there, but these are some of the more common ones in the American watch industry. That brings up a good point. This website does not talk about European watches. So if you've got a Swiss-made watch or if you've got an English-made watch, this website's not for you. It's not going to tell you really anything about it. There may be websites that talk about that, but as a collector myself of mostly American pocket watches, I don't know the resource. So leave a comment in the comments section if you collect European watches and you know of a similar database for European watches. I'd love to know it because I do get people asking me about it. But once you get to this pull-down menu and you choose a brand, and first time around, let's just choose Elgin. So you'll drop down, you'll pick Elgin. Once it's selected the brand, then you've got to be able to put in the serial number. And here's where we get to have a little bit of fun figuring out where and when your pocket watch was made. Because to find the serial number, you need to open up the pocket watch fully. I can't tell you how many people just send me a picture of the front of a pocket watch and say, when was this made and what is it? That is completely useless information. You've got to open up the back cover, maybe the two back covers, and you've got to give me the serial number on the movement. So let me show you the difference. This is the serial number on the case. This is the serial number on the movement. The case serial number, it means absolutely nothing regarding your watch. The best analogy I have for this is watches were made in the company, like the Waltham Watch Company or the Elgin Watch Company. The cases were made by a completely different entity. So that number has nothing to do with the watch that's inside of it. So I'll kind of give you an interesting story that might help make sense of this. A buddy of mine a long time ago bought himself a Jeep Wrangler, but someone swapped out the Jeep engine for a Corvette engine. So it looked like a Jeep, but it had a Corvette on the inside. It's the same way with a pocket watch. You can look at the case and wonder what it is, but it has nothing to do with the actual engine or the actual movement of the watch. So just because it looks one way on the outside, It doesn't mean anything until you actually look at the internals and see what the internal structure is. So that's kind of what I get probably the most kickback from on my emails, is people sending me information that they think they did some research on, but they actually did the research on the case and not on the movement. So I really want to differentiate that. The movement serial number is important. The case serial number is not important. And that movement serial number gets put into that database, and that's how you start getting some of the information. So let's pull one up. So with this Elgin watch that we're using as our hypothetical piece, the serial number is this. And when you put that serial number into this little text box and you press the enter, you then pull up a really fantastic information sheet. It tells you everything about the brand, the date it was made, the size of the watch, the production of the watch, and probably in terms of at least trying to price your watch, the total production of all watches similar to this. And I'll highlight this right here because this is a really important area. If your watch maybe only had 200, 500, or maybe even 1,000 total produced, that's probably a pretty valuable or interesting watch. If your watch has 50,000, 100,000, or maybe 200, 300,000, that's a pretty common watch. And generally speaking, that means your watch movement itself isn't that valuable. So just a point of reference, the smaller that number is, the more likely your watch may be worth something, or at least more than the typical pocket watch. So let's do one more example with a Waltham. We'll put in the Waltham brand, we'll put in the Waltham serial number, and we'll pull it up, and once again you get an information sheet. Tells you all the good information, the size, the time it was made, the numbers produced, and this is just a very useful piece of information. It'll tell you most of the things that I think most people email me about that want to know something about their movement. So that's your introduction to the PocketWatch database, a super useful tool. And not only does the PocketWatch database tell you something about the movement, in this special section, which is a little trickier to find, it can tell you something about the case. So here I'll point out the spot that I want you to look for. You want to look for the case identifier. This section of the website is particularly valuable to those who want to know probably the most important piece of information about their watch, which is how much is their watch worth? And the main way to differentiate a inexpensive versus an expensive watch is really what it's made of. If your watch is made out of a base metal, a plated metal, a gold filled, it's not very valuable. And I get a lot of heat when I talk about not liking gold filled pocket watch cases, but like it or not, it's a version of a plated case. It could be thick, it might have some value, but it doesn't have the same proportion of value. To put it into perspective, a gold filled pocket watch with a relatively common movement, you're looking at maybe 100, 200, if it's really beautiful and maybe a little bit more fancy, $300. So that watch is only $100 to $300. If it's in a solid gold case, you're looking at 3 or 4 times that. So you're really looking at a watch that goes from $800 to $1,200 relatively easy. And if it's a really nice watch, it can go much higher. So most people want to know, is my case solid gold? And this little search engine can actually help with that a lot. You can type in some of the key words that you see on the case, and you can even use the name for the symbol, and you'll get some pretty good information. So let's do an example or two and show you how it's done. So one of my least favorite brands when it comes to pocket watch cases is the Phase Watch Company. And it's not that they don't make nice cases, but they're deceptive in their practices. Phase makes gold-filled cases, period. But a lot of their cases look like they could be solid gold, the way they present them. And that's why this is such a useful tool. If you go to this search screen and you type in Phase, you could actually just search for every case they've ever made. Or if you see a different word on there like MONTREUX or MONARCH, you can actually search those terms as well, and you'll pull up some really useful information. So for example, let's do MONTREUX first. Pulling that up, it'll actually show you a diagram of what the trademark looks like and tells you underneath what it is. And so here's where you'll see it say gold filled, or later I'll show you a solid gold. And it'll tell you if it's 10 karat gold filled or 14 karat gold filled, and it'll even tell you the year's designation in most cases. And for those of you who aren't aware or haven't seen some of my previous videos, gold filled cases were usually warranted to survive a certain amount of years. So 10 years gold filled is a relatively thin coating, 25 years is a relatively thicker coating, and so on and so forth. So I guess a 25-year case is a better quality case than a 10-year case. It doesn't have anything to do with the carat of gold, just the thickness of gold. So 14 karat gold filled 25 years is somewhat of a standard designation for a gold filled case. So now if we pull up the Monarch version, similarly you'll see the same information all underneath that phase umbrella, and it just gives you more information. So I recently just got into an interesting debate, I guess you would call it, online with a gentleman who sent me an email. And he received a case that was from the Keystone Watch Company. And the tricky thing about the Keystone Watch Company is they make some actually beautiful solid gold cases, but mostly they're known for making some really nice gold-filled cases. And it does get a little bit confusing of what case is what. And the simplest way to at least differentiate there is looking at some of their symbols. The keystone, or the symbol of the Keystone Watch Company, is actually a triangular keystone shape. And you'll see that, and it may have a C or another letter inside of it. And that is the standard symbol of the Keystone Watch Company. That doesn't really mean much. But there's another symbol they use, which is almost the judicial scales. And if you see that on a watch, it's absolutely a gold-filled case. The analogy I used to the gentleman I was talking to is Diet and Coke. Coca-Cola makes a product called Coke. It's real Coke. When they make Diet Coke and they market Diet Coke, it's not really Coke, it's Diet Coke. If you see that scales on a pocket watch, that's the equivalent of Diet. It's there because it's not real Coke. It's not real gold, it's gold filled. And the easiest way to differentiate your Keystone watch case company is to type in Keystone and any symbols you see. If you see the word JBoss, which is a designation of a gold-filled case, type in the words. If you don't see that and you see scales, type in Keystone and scales, and it'll show you all of the trademarks that have that symbol. And similarly, when you see those pictures, you can see underneath what they're made of, what gold content, how many years designation sometimes, and you'd see if it's gold filled or if it's solid. In this case, because it's the scales, these will all be gold filled. And last but not least, let's look at a solid gold version. So Waltham is a watch company, but Waltham used to and still periodically made their own cases. So you can actually type in the Waltham brand if your case is marked Waltham, and you can see some of their symbols for the metals they used. And as you can see right here, this is a 14 karat gold Waltham case, and this denotes it being solid gold. So if you see that symbol on any Waltham pocket watches, you automatically know that not only is it a pocket watch that was probably made by the Waltham Watch Company, but it's cased in a Waltham Watch Company case, and it's solid gold. So very useful information, and definitely lets you know what your pocket watch case is made of, and gives you an approximate idea of how much it's worth. So getting back to that last subject, how much is it worth? And kind of like I spoke quickly about, generally speaking, most pocket watches aren't worth very much money. My most expensive pocket watch is almost the price of my least expensive wristwatch. They're miles apart, and that's what's kind of hard for some either new collectors or people who are actually just interested in making a buck off of a pocket watch. I get a lot of people who inherit pocket watches, and they want to know information about it so they can treasure it. But most of the people I get emails from are usually people who found a pocket watch, and they're curious, hey, did I make a good investment here? I found this pocket watch in a thrift store for $200. Is it really worth $200 or is it worth $1,500? And I mean, I get it. You want to find out if you made some money, lost some money, or if you found something that was a good investment. So definitely, these are the people who want to know what this watch is worth. And the simplest thing is, if you're allowed to, from the store obviously, open up the back of the watch, take a picture of it, and go home and do some of this research. If you find out that that movement is one of 100,000, the movement's not worth much. If you can see the case hallmarks and any symbols that would denote it being gold versus gold filled, that's going to be the make or break. If it's gold filled, that watch is probably worth $200, maybe $300. But if you see evidence of it being solid gold, now we're really getting somewhere. And then it really just depends on the size of the watch. If it's a 0 size watch or a 6 size, which are relatively smaller, ladies usually denoted watches, those are probably at the low end in gold going to be about $600, and maybe in the high end about $1,000. If you're looking at a gentleman's 12 size, 16 size, sort of the normal sizes, that's going to be $1,000 to maybe $1,500. And if you find some of these old-fashioned 18 sizes in a solid gold case, those can go for a lot of money because they're big. And the bigger the watch, the bigger the gold case. So those can sometimes go for $2,000, $2,500 just because of the gold content. That's kind of the general pricing for a gold watch. And here's where it gets sad. All of those prices, regardless of the size, if it's not gold, they're still only worth $200, $300. 18 size, bigger watches in a gold-filled case, that means nothing. Really, people are buying those for the gold quality. And that's probably the hardest thing people just don't understand when they ask me questions. Like, oh, look at this big tank of a pocket watch. Isn't it cool? And I'm like, super cool, but it's not worth anything. And if your investment is the game, then you're not going to be happy with that answer. If it's an heirloom and you're just going to keep it and love it, that's fantastic. But that's probably the thing I think people have the roughest time hearing from me, is that just because it's a larger watch doesn't necessarily make it valuable. So I guess the last little topic I want to point out is kind of related to what are those watches worth. And this is the part that I think most people have trouble with when they send me an email. I think people expect pocket watches to cost more than they really are worth just because they're old. Age doesn't really mean that much in terms of the worth of a pocket watch. The size of the watch, the age of the watch, if it's in a non-precious metal case, the price doesn't really change. And I just have the hardest time convincing people of that. Unless it's a rare movement, a particular railroad grade, if it's super high jeweled, if it's a very limited batch, that will increase the movement cost. But the grand majority of the Waltham Watch Company made 40 million watches. The Elgin Watch Company made 60 million watches. So, we've got 100 million watches out there from 2 brands. These are relatively common watches. And the grand majority have a very common price, unless they're in a gold case. And that's where, in the previous part of the video, finding out if your watch is in a gold case is so valuable. Because all of those $200, $300, maybe $400 watches, that absolutely multiplies if it's a gold case. As I said, the watch itself maybe not that valuable, but the case adds the value. Now, of course, if you take a valuable watch and put it into a valuable case, those watches can go up to $4,000, $5,000. But that's where you've got to do a little bit of research on both parts. What is my watch movement? Is it unique or valuable? And what is my case? Is it gold or not gold? And you put those pieces together and you'll really do the best job you can to evaluate what is your pocket watch. So I hope this video is far more informative than the video I made 2 years ago. Back then, I told you sort of the neat things about a pocket watch, what to look for, jewel count, materials, but I didn't really go into some of the questions that I think more users actually want to know. And I think most people want to know particularly, when was their pocket watch made? how unique or special is it, which is kind of how many jewels, or is it a special grade? And probably the most important, what is my pocket watch made of and what is it worth? And hopefully in this video, I've given you a pretty good resource where you can look most of that information up yourself. And if that works and you can find those answers, that's fantastic. And of course, if you've got any troubles with any of that, or if you need a little help finding the information, send me an email. My contact information's in the description or in my bio. And for anyone who's ever emailed me, I usually email you back pretty fast. But I do hope that my inbox thins out just a little bit, because I've been getting a lot of emails lately and they're decently time intensive. So if you guys can answer some of these questions, the easy ones by yourselves, hit me up with the harder ones. But thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this kind of content, please give the video a like. We're really trying to get up to that 100,000 subscriber limit so I can get that beautiful YouTube plaque. So if you haven't subscribed and you enjoy the videos, please, all the subscriptions help. I do appreciate it. And I'll catch you next time in a new video. If you enjoyed this content, I'd really appreciate it if you'd subscribe to the channel. Please leave a like, or maybe even a comment or a question. The YouTube algorithm loves it when you do that, and it helps the channel. And speaking of helping the channel, I've got 2 avenues where you can donate to the channel. You can join right here on YouTube by becoming a YouTube member, or you can follow the link in the description and join my Patreon. Thank you, I really do appreciate it.